What's up, everybody? We got a massive episode of Fallout Season 2 this week. Let's get right into episode 206. I'm gonna start things off where the show did, with a flashback, but this time we're not with Coop. Well, not yet. We started this week's episode with his wife Barb. I loved what they did visually in this opening scene, the reflections of both the bomb clouds and her family photo. It was amazing. We also got this one and a few more with both of them. They muddy the water on whether Barb's truly a villain or not and give the ghoul too much to think about in the wasteland. I'd rather be feral than be in his shoes. It's cruel. Anyways, at the Vault Tech campus in New Vegas, Hank lures Lucy in with a simulation of their old home in Vault 33. We got to see Hank's, the Cabal's, misguided vision of what needed to be fixed in the world. His speech, it definitely felt very Enclave-ish, bringing order, all that, but I don't want to speculate too much on that front. Having not played the games and everything, I was much more interested, as just a show watcher in Hank turning himself over. It seems like his job in the grand plan, at least the one in Vegas, is done, and now he doesn't need to be there to run the show. We'll get back to that in just a second, though, because I want to jump to the ghoul's struggle this week. We got two scenes at the pole. He's called home since Lucy pushed him out the window, and the nighttime scene should have been the only scene that we got in this episode. It's such an emotional scene, watching him fight for Janie, his daughter, fighting to keep his sanity, and in the back of your head, at least for me, I know this was true, you're just thinking about how unlikely a happy ending is for him, especially the one he's imagined. Which, speaking of his daughter, there was a moment that I thought she was the giant, the super mutant, who finally got the ghoul down from the pole, but no, I couldn't have been more wrong on that front. It was none other than Ron Perlman. I know for gamers, it was probably really cool, but it's pretty cool whenever Ron Perlman shows up somewhere. It was a great surprise, and he mentions a war down in his dungeon. Hopefully, we get more of him and more of these super mutants. This could be the ghoul's answer to the death claws. With that being said, there was unfortunately a section of the episode that I genuinely couldn't have cared less about, and that was what's going on down in 32 and 33. The idea that we have to waste time on a wedding in either episode 207 or 208 is terrible. Hopefully, Chet saves us from that and, runs away or something, gets himself offed. It makes me want to puke. And the scenes in 33, they were no better. They might have been worse as they came a couple weeks too late. The dramatic irony, it wasn't worth it sitting through either of these incest group scenes. It was brutal. But let's get back to the good, because there was a ton of it this week. I thought this scene with Lucy taking her dad out of the building was incredible. On one hand, this delay was almost certainly part of why Hank turned himself in. It was so theatrical, but I'm going to be stubborn about the idea of him not needing to be there in Vegas anymore, and that his minions can get the job done now. Either way, they do a phenomenal job backing Lucy into a corner, literally and figuratively, and forcing her back under her father's thumb. Finally, since it was a flashback heavy week, and they've been just as good as they've been most of the season, it's only fitting to wrap things up with the last one we got. This scene with Mr. and Mrs. Howard is up there with the best of not just the season 2 flashbacks, not just the show's flashbacks, but all of the show's scenes. We also got this one with Barb and Wilzig as Michael Emerson made his return this week. It turns out that dog-loving doctor was watching over Barb before the war, before the bombs dropped, but since he was just a scientist in the Enclave, and since he survived until the time of the show, I think he might have been another one of Moldaver's spies. Remember, she always knew some stuff when she would meet with Coop. It just makes sense to me, and it would be a nice connecting piece since he was originally going to deliver the Cold Fusion tour in Season 1. Then real quick, I've got one last thing for you guys. I promise it's just a quickie. Pause. I wanted to give some praise to the sets in Vegas, both Las Vegas and New Vegas. The hotel, the Vault Tech building that would give Dr. Evil his own mojo, and the Lucky 38 bar. Hell, even Robert House's command center from last week's episode, it was all so cool. But at the end of the day, I gotta say, this might be my favorite episode of the season so far. We're moving full speed ahead into the penultimate episode. Hank's manipulation is breaking through just as a new trio forms outside the compound, and the adventure was topped off with some great guest appearances on the cast. It was a fun week in the wasteland. And so that's going to do it for my review of Fallout episode 206. As always, I want to know what you guys thought about this week's episode, so let me know down in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed today's video, smash that like button on your way out, and make sure you have a great day.